Good morning, everybody. In our last discussion, we had started with elegy written in a country churchyard, and we had discussed a few opening stanzas. Let us now continue with the same discussion, and I begin where we stopped last time. The next stanza, first I read here the stanza. Let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys, and destiny obscure. No grandeur here with a disdainful smile, the short and simple annals of the poor. In this stanza, Gray has tried to foreground the idea that ambitious and showy people should neither look down upon the poor villagers nor scorn their homely joys. The stanza throws some light on the sympathy for the poor that was gradually awakening in Gray's time. Gray laments the lot of the forefathers of the villagers and pleads the cause of the downtrodden. He asks the rich and ambitious people not to make fun of, not to deride, not to look down upon with contempt the ordinary but useful work accomplished by the poor farmers. They lead a simple life. The poet further says that those who live in pomp and show and who lead a luxurious life should not despise the poor. They are not right in smiling in an ironical manner on the simple and short records of the lives of the poor villager. Here, ambition and grandeur are used as synecdoche, since the abstract is used here for the concrete. Both are personified here, and hence the figure of speech can be highlighted as personification in this stanza. The poet is here pleading for the cause of the poor farmers, who appear as the precursors of the romantic movement. The next stanza. The boast of heraldry, the pomp of power, and all that beauty, all that wealth ever gave, awaits alike the inevitable hour. The paths of glory lead but to the grave. The poet has highlighted here death as an ultimate end of life. Men of high birth and position all go to death. Beauty and wealth cannot save them from death. Death is a great equalizer. R.F. Charles has paraphrased this stanza in this way. Quote, the pride of the aristocrat in his noble birth, the grandeur of the statesman, the gifts of beauty and the wealth do not justify that their possessors in disdaining the simple, obscure but useful lives of the poor, because death awaits all alike, and all the paths that seem to lead to glory lead but to the grave. Unquote. Death is a great leveler of life, and that is why this stanza of elegy further develops the idea that the rich should not look down upon the poor. He says that there are some people who have the pride of royal power and who make an outward show of it. They may have beauty which their wealth has earned for them, but they are not right in showing pride of their high power or family status. They should not hate the poor, because death does not distinguish between rich and poor. Their power, wealth and beauty cannot save them from the cruel hands of death. Death is the ultimate end of life of every man born on this earth. In spite of his power, wealth, beauty and glory, a human being has to suffer the same sad lot and grave. He is unconscious of anything, and he becomes equal to a poor man. Death does not distinguish between rich and poor. Therefore, the wealthy people should not be contemptuous of the poor or the ordinary farmers. Let us move on to the next stanza. Know you proud, impute to these the fault, if memory over their tomb no trophies raise, where through the long drawn aisle and fretted vault the pealing anthem swells the note of praise. Proud people should not blame these poor rustics. if they have not been buried inside the churchyard and if no memorial has been erected for them. This is the message Gray conveys in this stanza. Continuing his advocacy of the downtrodden, Gray asked the rich and the proud people that they should not blame the poor rustics if their descendants have not constructed or erected any ornamental or grand sculpture or memorial for them. It is not their fault if they have not been buried inside the church in a respectable place and manner, where the rich are buried and in whose praise hymns are sung under the decorated arched roof of the church. Next, can storied urn or animated bust back to its mention call the fleeting breath? Can honor's voice provoke the silent dust of flattery, soothe the dull, cold ear of death? Here again, Gray questions and questioning the poor rustic's fate, which has been lying neglected in this churchyard. He once again derides the rich. Neither any memorial nor any song of praise can provoke the silent dust to speak once again. That is, he continues with the thought, with the idea of death as a great leveler. And not only death is a great leveler, but death once makes a soul silent, cannot bring it back to life. In this stanza, Gray has satirized rather in a very satirical vein or tone. He has foregrounded the longing of the rich for a show even after death. The rich aristocrats had adopted the Roman customs of preserving the ashes of the dead people in costly urns. Some made full-size statues of dead people in the Catholic churches of England. After appealing to the rich people that they should not look down upon the poor if the poor have not been able to provide with any grand memorial to their dead, the poet puts a simple question. He asks the rich if it is possible for the rich to call a departing soul or a dead man back to life by keeping his ashes in a costly or precious urn on which the story of his life is engraved, or by making lifelike statues in the churches. Can we bring back the dead to life? The answer is no. Songs may be sung in honor of the dead, but to no purpose. Not even flattery, F capital, here is highlighting the fact that flattery is personified here. The answer is no. Songs may be sung in honor of the dead, but to no purpose. Not even flattery can make death merciful. In short, the poet says that once a man is dead, he cannot be brought back to life either by monuments or songs or words of flattery or exaggerated praise. Therefore, if the poor forefathers of the village have not been provided with any appropriate tombstone or monument or statue or high flaunting lines in praise of the dead, they should have not been looked down upon. The rich who have all these things also die after death, and the poor and rich become equal after death. Let's move to the next stanza. Perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire, hands that the rod of empire might have swayed or waked to ecstasy the living lyre. The poet again foregrounds the thought that perhaps in this neglected churchyard are buried some poor rustics who could have proved themselves in life, who could have raised themselves high to higher positions in their lives had they been given proper chances. But circumstances had constricted their chances of raising high in life, and therefore they have lived a neglected life. The forefathers of the village could not achieve greatness in their lives and died unknown. It does not mean that they were inferior to the rich people in any respect, or they did not possess any virtue or any qualities. He says that some of the farmers buried in that neglected part of the churchyard might have had a divine inspiration and have become great poets. They might have earned great fame as the spiritual leaders of the world. Some of them might have held the scepter, the sign of royal power, in their hands and ruled an empire, whereas some might have earned fame as musicians and produced extremely melodious musical notes by playing upon the lyre. But unfortunately, poverty came as an insurmountable obstacle in their way, and they could not develop their talents, which were also buried with them. But knowledge to their eyes, her ample page, rich with the spoils of time, did never unroll. Chill penury repressed their noble rage and froze the genial current of the soul. The poet here says that because of their poverty and obscure fate, they could not acquire knowledge and fame, if checked the growth of their talents. Having described that the poor farmers had many good talents which they could not develop, Gray says that poverty was a great obstacle in the way of their progress. They could not develop their talent and died unknown. They could not acquire learning by reading books, and the accumulated wisdom of age was not revealed to their eyes. They could not benefit from it. Their poverty had a freezing impact or effect and suppressed the growth of their talents and genius and high and ardent ambition, and checked the flow of noble, warm, and joyous feelings in their hearts.